Here we are once again, my brothers and sisters, and welcome to another Living Hope Today study. Today we find ourselves in 2 Chronicles chapter 8, and this is a very interesting book. Just altogether, this book of Chronicles. We are learning about the history of the monarchy in Judaism, but the chronicler has written a long time after these events occurred. He is not current, and I'll show you why we know that. But in the end, there's a little spin to these chapters, and the spin sort of ignores some of the things that would be considered less desirable. Let's say it that way. Let me just show you what I mean. You remember the order of the Old Testament, at least the Jewish order of the Old Testament. They have the same first 5 books, the Torah, but then they have the former prophets, the Nevi'im, and the latter prophets, and the 12 books of prophecy as well. That's how the Bible is structured for their Old Testament. And then they have the poetical books, I can't say it today, the Ketuvim, the 5 scrolls, the historical writings. But I want you to remember that at the very end of the Hebrew Bible is this book we study called Chronicles, 1st and 2nd. It's almost like it's a summary of the history of Israel. Maybe not complete, but they put it at the end. The writer has seen everything happen. Now he's writing the conclusion of it. And we'll see that today as we move forward. Look at this. Okay, so the chapter 8 starts like this. At the end of 20 years, Solomon's been working on the temple and his own palace. So at the end of 20 years, during which Solomon built the temple of the Lord and his own palace, Solomon rebuilt the villages that Hiram had given him and settled Israelites in them. So we're going to watch the expansion. We're going to watch what Solomon does over years of time. Solomon then went to Hamath Zobah and he captured it. He also built up Tadmor in the desert and all the store cities he had built in Hamath. Now, I know these places don't mean much to us today, but let me just show you on this little tiny map. You might see here, right next to me here is the Dead Sea. Right? Well, way up here is Hamath. So it would be modern day Syria, if I have my bearings correctly. So what does that tell us? Well, Solomon's moving all over the region to accomplish his goals, right? So he rebuilt Upper Beth Horon and Lower Beth Horon as fortified cities with walls and with gates and bars. Remember, the Lord has promised him wisdom, but the Lord has also promised him a great wealth. And we see as he expands his empire, so to speak, that he's all over the place with lots of different things, as well as Baalath and all his store cities. A store city is just what it sounds like. It's a place where you store things, and all the cities for his chariots and for his horses. Look at this. He had so many things, he had to have cities to store them in. Whatever he desired to build in Jerusalem, in Lebanon, and throughout all the territory he ruled. So that's really a good spin on Solomon, right? Look at him, man. He's just expanding. He's doing great. Now we learn about his labor force. All the people left from the Hittites, Amorites, Perizzites, Hivites, and Jebusites. These people were not Israelites, so not Jewish, but Gentile. That is, their descendants remaining in the land. Remember, a lot of the people that were naturally there were eliminated by God as God gave the land to his people, whom the Israelites had not destroyed. So there wasn't a complete removal of all the people in the promised land. But what does Solomon do with the leftover people? Well, these Solomon conscripted for his slave labor force, as it is to this day. So, okay, you're a Gentile, you're in the Jewish land, they've taken over. What happens to you? You're conscripted. Solomon used foreigners. Well, really, they might have been native people, but they became foreigners as God gave the promised land to his people. In the end, these people were working as slaves to do what Solomon wanted. Solomon did not make slaves of the Israelites for his work. They were his fighting men, commanders, and his captains and commanders of his chariots and charioteers. So if you were an Israelite, you were excluded from being conscripted. They were also King Solomon's chief officials, 250 officials supervising the men. Excuse me. Solomon brought Pharaoh's Watch this. Solomon brought Pharaoh's daughter up from the city of David to the palace he had built for her. Okay, so this isn't his palace. Solomon had a palace built for this woman, Pharaoh's daughter. Now, a lot of times there was political alliance formed by one king marrying another king's daughter. And this might simply be that Solomon has made an alliance with Egypt, and then he took Pharaoh's daughter as his wife to solidify the alliance. And he takes her to Jerusalem and builds her a palace, and he says, "For my wife must not live in the palace of David, king of Israel." So I'm going to build her own palace. Okay, because the places the ark of the Lord has entered are holy. Okay, so, Pharaoh's daughter, my wife, let me build you your own palace. Now, the Chronicler just gives us this hint, this little hint. Nothing more is said. But do you remember what happened in 1 Kings 11? We've already studied it, but just to refresh you, let me take you there for a second. King Solomon, however, loved many foreign women besides Pharaoh's daughter. The Moabites, Ammonites, Edomites, Sidonians, and Hittites, they were from nations about which the Lord had told the Israelites, "You must not intermarry with them, because they will surely turn your hearts after their gods." Nevertheless, Solomon held fast to them in love. Oh, so in Kings, we see the reality of Solomon. In Chronicles, okay, well, he had a wife that was Pharaoh's daughter, and he built her a palace. But in Kings, we see that Solomon is way out of bounds in terms of what God has said. He had 700 wives of royal birth. That means he's marrying a lot of king's daughters, right? And 300 concubines, and his wives led him astray. Exactly what God warned against happens. As Solomon grew old, his wives turned his heart after other gods, and his heart was not fully devoted to the Lord his God as the heart of David his father had been. He followed Ashtoreth, the goddess of the Sidonians, and Molech, the detestable god of the Ammonites. I hope you remember that Molech advocates child sacrifice. So Solomon did evil in the eyes of the Lord. He did not follow the Lord completely as David his father had done. Well, there you have it. Kings is giving us the full reality of what Solomon's doing. Chronicles, what do we get? Well, we get this just little mention. He had a wife, she was Pharaoh's daughter, and he built a palace for her. That's it. Huh. Well, that's the happy spin. In the end, he did have that wife, and there's no deception here. It's just that the chronicler is unwilling to really give the whole story. Just like with King David, he left out the part about Bathsheba and Uriah. He's showing the power of the monarchy instead of the faults of the monarchy. On the altar of the Lord that he had built in front of the portico, Solomon sacrificed burnt offerings to the Lord. That sounds good, doesn't it? According to the daily requirements for offerings commanded by Moses for Sabbaths, new moons, and the 3 annual feasts, the Feast of Unleavened Bread, the Feast of Weeks, and the Feast of Tabernacles. So this is completely lined up with what Scripture would call Solomon to do. In keeping with the ordinance of his father David, he appointed the divisions of the priests for their duties, and the Levites to lead the praise and to assist the priest according to each day's requirement. He also appointed the gatekeepers by divisions for the various gates, because this was what David, the man of God, had ordered. Again, total compliance in 2 Chronicles chapter 8. But the backstory is still there. They did not deviate from the king's commands to the priests or to the Levites in any manner, including that of the treasuries. All Solomon's work was carried out from the day the foundation of the temple of the Lord was laid until its completion. So the temple of the Lord was finished. Then Solomon went to Ezion, Geber, and Elath on the coast of Edom, and Hiram sent him ships commanded by his own officers, men who knew the sea. These, with Solomon's men, sailed to Ophir and brought back 450 talents of gold. That's a lot of gold, which they delivered to King Solomon. What have we learned about Solomon? Well, there's some details about how he grew as a king and how he used his resources, how he protected them by storing them in the various cities that he upgraded. What haven't we learned? Well, we just got a hint that there might be some trouble. Pharaoh's daughter is now his wife. Pharaoh's daughter now has her own palace. But the text is basically going to leave us here when it comes to the second book of Chronicles. We're not going to hear about the rest of it. In the end, we'll see Solomon exit the stage when we get to chapter 9. Just understand, everybody has good things and bad things. Solomon in Chronicles, his good things are on display. But we know that just like us, he has weakness. And he chooses to dishonor God through those weaknesses by doing exactly what God told him not to do. I hope that's none of us. God help us. Serve him well today, church. God bless you.
Who is it who for sinners shed his blood, and now for cleansing all can plunge beneath that flood? It's Jesus. But do you know who he is? He's the image of the invisible God, and he's the brightness of his glory, the first, the last, the future, the past. He is God.